Live from the bridge at the Launchpad Studios in Huntington, New York, it's Sports Talk New York with your hosts, Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter. Sports Talk New York is sponsored in part by Cardboard Memories, Clearview, Long Island, the law firm of Decolator, Cohen, and DePrisco, the Phoenix Tube Company, PIMS Incorporated, fueling brand performance for 30 years, Prince Associates for all your insurance needs, and Soho Table Hockey. Here are your hosts, Mark and AJ.
And good Sunday evening to you. Just right off the top of the bat, whoever is tuning in, because we had publicized that Nick Swisher was going to be our guest tonight. Nick Swisher had an emergency and will not be with us tonight, but we will be rescheduling that. I am looking forward to it. Just a great guy. I've had interactions with Nick in the past, and spoke to him today, and he was really sorry, but this could not be avoided, and he will be on with us in the near future. So if you are tuning in for Nick, I beg you to stay with us because it's still going to be a great show. AJ, my co-host, is joining us from Florida. How you doing, AJ?
I'm doing fine. Hey, today I played golf. How bad day can it be? What's the weather like up there in New York today?
Not bad. Listen, most of the snow is gone here. A lot of rain, so it's getting rid of mostly anywhere on the grass. It's pretty much gone, other than where they plowed and put big piles. It's still there, but really nice couple of days here in the 50s. Weather getting nice, and you're flipping through the TV and you're seeing Yankee baseball. And the next couple of days, the Mets will be on Tuesday. So we know that the nice weather is right around the corner. And
that's the exciting thing. There's new baseball to see, and baseball maybe even to see live while I'm down there. They try and get to a game. They're allowing 1,000 people a game into the games, and it's something to see. It tells you that things hopefully, finally, after a year now, maybe just starting to get back to normal.
Hopefully, for sure. And speaking of normal, what we normally do each and every week, we start off with the Cardboard Memories Major League Baseball report. It's with John Carpenter. It's sponsored by Cardboard Memories, which is one of Long Island's most reputable memorabilia retail stores for over 29 years. The owner of Cardboard Memories, Scott Stamell, is known for his knowledge and savvy of authentic autographs and has been featured on HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. Cardboard Memories possesses the honesty and integrity one would want and need from a memorabilia source. Scott personally works with each customer to ensure they understand the authenticity of each item. Every piece of autographed memorabilia is purchased directly from the source. Cardboard Memories also specializes in custom framing appraisals and authentication, and they are always buying collections large and small. Let Cardboard Memories run your next charity fundraising auction. Call them to find out how they can help your organization at no cost. Cardboard Memories is located at 6401 Jericho Turnpike, New York. Visit them on the web at www.cardboardmemories.com or follow them on Facebook or Instagram. How you doing, Johnny?
I've never been led into by the phrase, speaking of normal. That's a first for me, so thank you.
All right.
Well, nobody ever called you normal, right, John?
That's correct.
All right. Before we get into the whole baseball piece, what we're going to do, though, is this week, I've been on a lot of Zooms with the New York Mets. We're going to play a few of the interviews, the questions I got to ask. The first one we're going to hear from is Marcus Stroman, and then when we come back out of the interview, you, I, and AJ will talk about it.
Mark Roseman from Sports Talk New York. You're next.
Hey, Marcus, welcome back. You mentioned this about your preparation and your training being elite, and I guess that leads to your confidence, which is off the charts. You probably expect more out of yourself than anyone else does. How does all that factor into being able to pitch under the microscope of New York? You mentioned it. If you say something, it's going to be headlines. How does all that help you deal with New York?
I mean, I've always liked the pressure. You know what I mean? My whole come up, my dad, there's no one that put more pressure on me than my father at a young age. So I can truly get through anything. But yeah, when it comes to New York and pitching there, obviously that's the Mecca. That's where you want to be. You know what I mean? I'm excited to go out there and perform. You know what I mean? Because there's this huge stigma that I was terrible in my 11 starts with the 3.7. I just kind of laugh at that. I know what I'm going to put in this year going forward. So yeah, like you said, confidence definitely comes from work ethic, man. I truly pride myself on that. Like I said, I'm 5'7", so I don't take days off. There's no room to miss for me. I truly, when I leave here, I'm in my hyperbaric. I have Nikki here. I'm doing dry needling. I'm doing soft tissue. I'm focused on my mind. I do everything to truly put my mind and my body at the best possible place to be elite out there each and every time. And I put a huge emphasis on my mind and my mental as well. I have a mental coach. who I speak to often, who kind of is able to lock me in when things get hectic. So I take every opportunity to better myself in every single lane, on and off the field. Even when baseball's over, I plan on being great in life in general, until the day I die. So that's kind of the mindset that I have. That's the mindset that I'll continue to take. My dad from a young age always taught me to have a chip on my shoulder and be the most confident guy in the room. And that's going to stay. That's going to stick with me forever, regardless of what anybody says ever.
Okay, so we know Marcus Stroman's attitude, and we got a little glimpse of it not last year, 2 years ago. And then, I included, I think we gave him a little bit of a bad rap when he, opted out, and we're saying this is the guy that's confident and all this, but, why was he, why did he opt out? And then we said it's dollars and cents because, he can get the qualifying offer and then he can pitch a full season and look for the money. But everything you hear from this guy, he, unless he totally spits the bit, he's a guy that New York fans are going to love. He's brimming with confidence, and he exudes confidence, and he's so articulate, so smart, and just the way he goes about his business as far as the hyperbaric and everything he does. And I love what he said, that his dad taught him to always have a chip on his shoulder. And on top of that, the one statement that really stuck with me was that after baseball, whatever he does, he wants to be great at it. So John and AJ, we'll go with you first, John. What is your feeling of the type of season Marcus Stroman's going to have? And on top of that, what do you think his influence will be among some of the younger guys on this team?
When I hear that, I think of the saying, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And there's one thing that Stroman has not done is fail to prepare. He is as prepared as he can be. He puts out those videos of his workouts on Twitter, so we all know about that. The thing that sticks with me is that he spent this past winter with Codify, which is basically an organization that helps you sequence pitches. It takes what you have and tailors a game plan to your pitches. It really worked well for Dan Straley in the KBO last year. He had a phenomenal season. And before you say that, hey, it's Korean baseball, he did things that were even unheard of in the KBO. He had an outstanding season. Now you're going to see what it does for a major league player. I'm really excited about Stroman's season. I've been saying for a few months now that I think he's going to have a better season than Trevor Bauer. And the Mets aren't going to pay nearly as much for Bauer. I'm really excited to see what Stroman's going to do. I think he's going to take that second spot in the rotation and run with it. AJ,
what's your opinion on Stroman?
I would like to believe he's great. I like to believe and root for anybody who is his height, which is my height. So I like that, anybody who competes at that level. I have to tell you, though, part of me says there's a lot of collective amnesia and wiping away, the memory of how he, opted out of the season last year and the timing and waiting for the contract. And, there's a lot I think he has to prove to me. He says stuff. I'm a little wary. I'll believe it when I see it. I want to believe it. I want to root for the guy. But, he talks about a mental coach, and the advisors that he has. Somebody advised him last year to look out for number one, not look out for the team. So he's got to prove a lot to me.
Well, the other thing is, and he's got that confidence, but also what I do like, listen, it's a double-edged sword because he's on social media. And if you're on social media, you open yourself up for criticism. And the second anyone criticizes him, including former teammates, he blocks them. But the reason why he blocks them is because he doesn't want any negativity in his life. And that's why he blocks them. But there are teammates that have trashed him, and there's a lot of them. So I don't know. I like the guy. I like everything he puts out there. I like the attitude. I like the positivity. I think that he is also, listen, he's pitching for a contract. That's always a good thing. When you're pitching for your one-time big contract, that plays in the Mets' favor. And I think he's going to, and I agree with you, John. I think at the end of the day, I think that would be a great poll for us. If you put up Carrasco, you put up Walker, and you put up Stroman. Out of those three, how many do you think will have better numbers at the end of the year than Trevor Bauer? So that's a question to you, John. Out of those three, how many of those three Met pitchers end up at the end of this year with better numbers than Trevor Bauer?
Well, I certainly think Stroman does. I wouldn't want to put the pressure of outperforming anybody on Carrasco and Walker. These are guys who are in the 3 and 4 spot in the rotation. I don't know if they're going to have better numbers than Bauer, because I think Bauer is going to be hit or miss. He's either going to take Los Angeles by storm. He's either going to do that. He's going to prepare well analytically, and he'll have a great season, or he's going to go back to being a mediocre 500 pitcher. So I think, I don't think it really, I just put out that comparison between Stroman and Bauer because of the money that that each was making and the relative headache that they bring. I don't think Stroman is going to bring a headache to New York. Like Bauer's already brought a lot of a good amount of angst to the Dodgers and their fan base, and he hasn't even pitched a game for them yet. So I think Carrasco and Walker, I think they'll be fine for what they are. I think they were both great pickups for what they're going to do. Carrasco being number 3, Walker being number 4, and they seem like guys that are going to be good in the room also. So I think that I don't know if they're going to outperform Bauer, but I think they're going to be great fits for what the Mets need.
I think it's hard to really look and compare, because look how each fits into rotations. They're both very, very good rotations, but they have different roles. And I think if you look at them, will each person on the Mets staff perform their role and maybe outperform the position on the Dodgers staff? I think that's entirely possible. I mean, take a look at the competition. I think Carrasco is a sleeper. I mean, I think he could turn in numbers better than Bauer. I think he could turn in, great numbers.
Career-wise, he is better than Bauer.
Right?
Career-wise, he has better numbers than Bauer.
He has better numbers than Bauer. I think you look at Carrasco, you look at Stroman, you look at Walker. Walker's another question mark because of health also. If they are all well physically, I think, it's almost unfair to compare who's got the better rotation, as long as both get the job done. And I think you look at the Mets rotation, they're not going to, say, rotate through, the Michael Wacha and Rick Porcellos anymore, waiting for Syndergaard to come back. I mean, they're much better shape now than they were at this time last year, and that's significant.
Agreed. And another piece of that rotation is David Peterson. I got to speak to Peterson during one of the Met Zooms this past week, so let's listen to that, and then we'll get your reaction right after that.
Next question is from Mark Roseman.
Hey, David, as the offseason unfolded and, Stroman accepts the qualifying offer, they get Carrasco and now with Walker, how does your mindset change as far as the competition for one of those starting spots in the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think pitching depth is always something good to have. And for me, I want to come in here and do my thing and let the rest take care of itself. If I can, however I can help the team win, that's what I'm here to do. I'm ready to go, like I said, and excited to be back in camp and ready to compete and get after it.
Now, for me, I agree. You can never have too much pitching, and I think that is even amplified this particular season because you have pitchers that are coming off of probably the lowest innings amount that they've pitched in years, and you're really going to have to manage those innings to make sure that you don't have injuries. And I think the fact that the Mets do now have 6, maybe even 7 legitimate starters, that could be helpful. But the question is, at such a young stage in his career, the development of Peterson, will it be stunted by not having enough innings this season? We'll start with you, Johnny.
Well, first off, who is Mark Roseman? But to answer your question, it's a great point. These guys are coming off career lows in pitching, so who knows if they're going to ramp up. What's going to happen to these guys when they ramp up? It makes it really important to have guys like Jordan Yamamoto from the Marlins, which I thought was an excellent pickup for depth. Joey Lucchesi, same thing. Corbin Burns also, or is it Corbin Burns or Jacob Barnes or one of the Jacob Barnes? Right, I got the two confused. But great pickups there. I think it really all depends. Again, like we go back to the Stroman quote. It's about preparation. It's about preparation physically to ramp up back to those innings, and everybody is flying blind on this. Everybody in the league is bouncing back from an 11 start season, a 12 start season. So it really depends on who can figure out, who can unlock that key to staying healthy this season, going from 60 innings to 200. It's a tall task for everybody in the league. Whoever figures it out the quickest is going to have the most success.
AJ?
First of all, Jonathan, you're talking about Corbin Burns-Sen, who was from Major League, as you remember, not Burns. But I think there are a lot of questions, not just for the Mets. There are players who did well in a 60-game season and players who didn't. And the biggest question about David Peterson is, what can you say? How much can you bank on what he did in that 60-game season, in those starts that he had? I think it's going to take a while, maybe even half a season, for a lot of that to shake out, not just for him, but for people who did well last year and for people who didn't do well. Was it because it was a short season? Was it because they couldn't get going? Was it because they didn't have the full competition? I think, look, very interesting to have him. I'd like to see him in rotation. I hope he does as well as he did last year. I hope he does better than he did last year. But with anybody, as well as he did, and let's get away from pitching for a second, you want to see what does it say about Alonso and how Pete Alonso did last year. Was that because of the 60-game season he couldn't get on track? There's a lot of questions to ask, to be answered as we go through the season. And I think, it's going to take probably 82 games to get a better idea.
Well, same thing with J.D. Davis. Also, everybody is all ready to get rid of J.D. Davis and bring in Chris Bryant because he slipped last year. But you got to realize that everybody was performing under excruciating circumstances. So that's why I give a little more credence to the people who did well, because if you could do well under circumstances like this, then you're doing something right. But however, your competition was limited. You might have faced some people on the other side who were going through a tough stretch because of what was going on. So you're right. I think it's going to be at least a half a season before we realize, well, what was last year all about? And I think in a lot of instances, you could throw last year out the window. I think that's what we're going to wind up doing. I mean, Frankie Lindor had a tough 2020. So that's all I would say on that.
I agree. And here's some of the reasons for that as well. And Chili Davis spoke about that during the week as well. Chili Davis wasn't with the team. And when we asked Chili, what effect he felt that had, he was working virtually. He said, well, the difference is, he said that you mentioned Alonso. He said with Pete alone, he saw that, each day before a game, he would go over what the approach against that pitcher would be. And he'd watch. And sometimes Pete would load up and he'd overstride. He'd do certain things. And when you come back to the dugout, Chili would just remind him, remember what your game plan approach was today? You're not doing that. Pete didn't have that safety net. He would go and he'd do his thing and he'd have no one in, not no one, but, Chili is the guy. He is their hitting guru. He's the guy that improved a lot of these batters. On top of that, and no one really asked this question, and Chili had to go, and it's the one thing I really wanted to ask, was when you're Pete Alonso and you're coming off of that monster season, and you start the season slow, and it's a 60-game season, and in the back of your mind, you're always striving, listen, even myself or AJ, when he goes out to golf, or John, whatever, you go and do something, you always have your numbers that that you're capable of doing in the back of your head. And as a season starts, and if you're playing softball or you're golfing and there's 3 or 4 times you go out and you're not hitting those numbers, as long as you have a lot more games to do it, you don't have that pressure. But now after 10 games and you start thinking in your head, well, I need to do this to even get back on that pace. And it starts playing a mental game and it just snowballs. When you have 50 games after that first 10 to make up those numbers, as opposed to 152 games, the mindset changes. The approaches to the at-bat changes. So I think that's a lot of what we saw in a lot of batters last year. So I agree with you. I think we need to throw those numbers out the window. You mentioned McNeil. Let's hear from Jeff McNeil, and then we'll come back to you guys.
Next question is from Mark Roseman.
Hey, Jeff, good to see you. Louis mentioned the importance of the leadership group with all the different restrictions of the COVID in effect during spring training. But you take a look at the roster and the high-energy, optimistic guys you have like Stroman, Alonso, Lindor, yourself. How important is that to keeping the energy level up, and how important will that be going forward in this camp?
It's huge. We got a great guys in the locker room, and yeah, they definitely bring a lot of energy every single day. So that's always nice. It's a long season. It's tough to have energy every single day. So you got guys in the locker room to help pick you up. Help bring that energy and help get you focused. Every single day.
Thanks.
So that's another thing. All sports, we take it for granted. It's as any workplace. Listen, are you as effective at your job when you're doing it over Zoom as opposed to if you're in your regular work, place? Their whole environment changed. Baseball players are creatures of habit. So the fact that the Mets have a lot of these high energy guys now that when they're on the field, raising that energy level up, I think it is very important. And if you remember with the fans, when the Mets got on that roll and they were doing things like ripping the shirts off and things like that, they fed off of that energy. I think last year, not having the fans, this team needs that. And I think adding a guy like Lindor is so important to the mix. AJ, what do you think?
Well, I think looking at Jeff McNeil, the most important thing for him is having a solid, is benefiting from Robin Cano not being there. I think being able to play the same position day in and day out. So baseball players are creatures of habit. Day in and day out, play with a really good shortstop, a double play combination, playing his natural position. I think you look ahead, in addition to the locker room was there last year. They do feed off the fans somewhat, but they were there. I think for him, the biggest plus to this season is going to knowing he's going to be in the same position, probably day in and day, not playing 2 games at second, then 2 games at third, then left field, and back to second, and 7 innings here and 2 innings there. I think he's going to have a good season because he's going to have a set position, a shortstop who's going to make him better, and I think that's going to feed on the energy in his case.
Johnny?
I agree wholeheartedly. We talk about chemistry, we talk about leadership, and I've always been the one to say that we talk about it like it's the be all end all a lot, especially on social media. And I think it is overrated in that case. But when you have, because talent wins first and foremost. Now the Mets have talent. The Mets have enough talent, I think, to get them 90% of the way. And when you have that talent, that's when the chemistry kicks in. Just like McNeil said, it's hard to stay up 162 days a year, but it's a lot easier when you're good. When you're good and you hit those rough patches, then you've got those players in that room that can pick you back up and get you back out there. So yeah, I do think chemistry is important. I don't think it's as important as a lot of people make it out to be. I still think talent is the end all be all. But I think the Mets have it, and I think AJ's absolutely right. I think Jeff McNeil playing one position and having that position be his best position is going to make a huge difference. Remember, he made a lot of errors at third base last year, and when he hurt his knee, it was in left field making a catch. Keep him at second base. Hopefully he can stay at second base the rest of his career.
I totally agree. Before we go to Aaron Loop, one of the other things that came out during the Zooms, and it was a fascinating 45 minutes with Francisco Lindor. Just a breath of fresh air, just a total honesty. But one of the things that really struck me, and I was shocked by it, because you think every single one of these players are so analytically driven and digest all the information. But Lindor said that he doesn't like the shifts. He doesn't like to be put in position by the reports. A guy hitting the ball 80% over to his left or 85% to his right. He says because those numbers are skewed. It doesn't take into account what that pitcher is pitching that day. It doesn't take into account what that batter is going through in the slump. He says he relies on his instincts, and he'd rather live and die with his instincts. And if he misses the ball, that's on him. Then he said if he is positioned by a manager and then misses a ball, it eats at him, and it eats at him. He thinks that, the shift takes away from the game. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but, what are your thoughts on what he said about the shift and relying on his instincts? John?
Me first? Okay. Yeah. So, it's funny because I read something very interesting the other day. It was an article in the Players Tribune by Blake Snell. And he was talking about the infamous Game 6 of the World Series. And he said, what a lot of people don't know is that I was, I'm all in on Kevin Cash. I'm all in on what he does. And I understand why he does what he does. But when I was going out there rolling, the moment that I saw somebody warming up in the bullpen to start the 6th inning, my mind was mush. I was panicking in terms of, okay, now I have to be perfect to stay in this game. It put a lot of pressure on him. Whereas if he doesn't see that reliever in the bullpen, he probably goes along with the same line of thinking, and he's fine the rest of the way. I think what Lindor says is a lot of that. Now that you put him in a position where he's got to be in a shift, now guess what? Now he's overthinking. Now he's like, okay, well, I have to do this, and I have to do that, and what if I screw this up because it's the shift? It gets in your head, and I think that's what people need to understand with analytics. Analytics is great, but if you apply them in the right way, and only if you do it in conjunction with how your players think. A guy like Bauer, he likes to be analytically driven when he pitches, so he's probably more accepting of the shifts than, say, Jake Arrieta is, who had come out and said he didn't like the shifts. So I think that it's a fine line between analytics and scouting, and I think the teams that can figure out the right mix will do it right.
AJ?
I agree with John on a lot of that. If you take a look at the players, the really, really good players, and Francisco Lindor is certainly one of them, at this point don't need this level of analytics to compensate for some physical deficiencies, some talent deficiencies. And I see he wants to just go out and play the game. He does better if he can just look and react. He has a reaction. You know what analytics will come into play for Francisco Lindor 10 years from now, when he's lost a step, when he doesn't cover as much ground as he used to be able to, and he needs that to help. And I think of some shortstops I saw, years and years and years ago, at the end of their careers. Dick Groat is one that I think of, who played for the Pirates and the Cardinals. And at the end of his career, he needed all of that because he had no range. You think of other shortstops like that. Once he loses his range, he needs the analytics. Until then, he's got the talent, and I see where he's coming from. It takes for him a little fun out of the game, and it takes a little of probably his performance. So he wants to be able to react and say, hey, I can do this. And for a player as talented as Lindor, I hate to say it, he doesn't need the analytics.
Yeah, live and die on your players' strengths and weaknesses, and that was the whole thing with Blake Snell. You go with what you got. You developed a pitcher like Snell for years and years for this moment. Let him be in that moment.
So you mentioned Corbin Burns, and so we have to give equal time. So my opinion on this is, in the immortal words of Tanner Boyle, let them play. So yeah, definitely let Lindor play where he wants to play. All right, let's listen to what Aaron Loop had to say.
Mark Roseman from Sports Talk New York is next.
Hey, Aaron, you mentioned Dane Johnson. He also was instrumental in having you drop down your arm angle a little bit as well. Lots of pitchers, when they're drafted, have a huge reluctance to change what got them drafted. Why were you so adaptable? And even the fact that he just taught you another pitch at this point in your career, what is it about your nature that lets you adapt and change things up a little bit?
Well, I've always been a guy that it's like whatever it takes, whatever you need me to do, or whatever it takes to get to where I need to be, I was going to do it. But I was also at a point in my career, the arm slot I was at, I'd had a couple shoulder impingements, and my stuff was kind of going away, and I wasn't pitching very well at all. So when he came in and told me, he was like, hey, we want you to try something. You ever try throwing sidearm? I was like, yeah, every pitcher tinkers around and does things, on the outfield playing catch, but nothing ever really too serious. And he's like, hey, you ever wanted to try it all the time? And I was like, yeah, we can give it a shot. If you think I'm going to be better than what I am now, then yeah, absolutely. I'll give it a shot. And we just kind of ran with it from there. It took off. We threw a bullpen that day. I pitched in the game that night, sidearm, and he goes, whatever we just did today, he goes, you can do that from here on out, because your stuff is that much better. So it just kind of took off and ran with it, and it's progressed, and we've learned things along the way. And like you said, he taught me another pitch in the cutter that has progressed me even more. So I definitely owe him a lot over the course of my career.
So Aaron Loop, right off the bat, has the best accent on the New York Mets, without a doubt. That's number one. But it was also interesting, too, within the same week when we spoke to Matt Allen. he had mentioned something which I found out fascinating also. He said that when he was with the Cyclones, the pitching staff wanted him to develop a changeup, and they wanted him to throw it, and they told him, don't worry about results. Just throw it. You got to mix it in, got to work on it. Doesn't matter if you get lit up. And I found it interesting that you have Aaron Loop here. You drop down through sidearm, says whatever it takes, he'll do whatever they want him to do. And it's so strange that we just spoke about analytics. So you have two guys that trying to make different teams and trying to keep their numbers down, experimenting, to the detriment of their numbers, but for the long range betterment of their game. So I'm just wondering how guys in the minor leagues walk that fine line, and are we going to start going back to developing more pitches, as opposed to keeping the gun on this guy who can throw 90, 95, that's his pitch, keep on pitching against the gun and not developing other pitchers? Are we going to start using the lower leagues as development? AJ, you take that one first.
I think you're raising not quite the answer to your question, but a similar thing. One of the biggest questions to me for the Mets this year, and it looks at this same thing, is I think the book is still out on Jeremy Hefner as a pitching coach. And, some players love him. I'm not so sure he's the right person for the job, but looking, what does he do? Does he work with the players? Does he get them better? Tell them to develop a new pitch, work with them on, tell them to not throw a pitch. And he's a big analytics guy. So I'm not so sure, is he going to work that? One of the big questions for me is he the right guy? Is he a major league pitching coach, not, the number 2 guy, which he was in Minnesota? I think looking ahead, and that goes down through the minor leagues. What's the plan? Who's the minor league pitching coach this year, Mark? Do you know?
John? I think Phil is still the roving instructor. I don't know who the minor league coordinator is.
Yeah. Looking at what they do and how they work in sync with the major league staff, it's a test of the staff. It's a test of the new regime or the new old regime with Sandy Alderson, looking at the development of pitchers. And it starts, I think, with the top, with a pitching coach who for me, the book is still out on.
John?
It goes back to everybody is different. Francisco Lindor isn't a fan of the shifts, but other players that need the shift would want them. And in terms of pitchers, how many times have you seen a pitcher struggle for 2 years in the prime of his career because a pitching coach said, "Oh, you should add this pitch," and then their results get much better when they discard that pitch? Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody has a different level of adaptability also, and I think it's incumbent upon the scouts and the coaches to figure out which pitches and which ideas work better with each pitcher. That's a tough job, but that's the beauty of scouts. Then and it's funny how you framed it as, are the minor leagues going to be used for development? Isn't that what they've always been or always should be? I mean, that's and I do think that maybe we can get away a little bit from looking at the gun. I mean, how many baseball people go on television and say and complain about the gun being the be all end all? We seem to hear that from everybody, but nobody does something about it. So maybe the tide is turning.
One more question, Mark and John. You talk about the minor leagues and the development tool. How much is that going to be changed by the fact with the contraction in the minor leagues?
Well, it should make things easier, right? I mean, in that respect, because you have less teams and you can kind of have a little bit more control over that. I mean, I'm not for contraction of the minor leagues from a fan standpoint, but maybe it does make things a little more controllable. Maybe
there's less opportunity to try people out, to have people try things and do things and look around, because every roster spot is that much more precious because that many fewer teams.
Right,
yeah, that's the point.
Depends on what the focus is. So if you're down in single and double A and realize that, you're going to teach your hitters to hit behind the runner, the fundamentals that you're not going to care about, averages. You're going to make sure that these players develop the right way. And I think that's the paradigm that's going to start shifting. I think because of these shifts, you're going to have batters that can hit to all fields. It's the only way to beat the shift. The shift is not, leaving baseball. The only way you make it leave baseball is you hit against it and you make them pay for it. So that's
but you say that and about the hitting against the shift, and it's we thought that maybe baseball would self-correct and say, oh well, there's a big hole on the left side, I'll just go the other way. But if it was going to self-correct, that would have self-corrected by now. I feel like we've gone through a whole generation of players that are taught that the best way to beat a shift is to hit it out over it and over the wall. So I don't know if that's going to happen so much. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier with the pitchers, but the hitters, I find it hard to believe that that we're going to come up with a whole bunch of Jeff McNeils and Juan Pierre's coming out of the system. And I don't know if players are going to want to do that because singles hitters don't get paid.
That's true. All right, let's shift our attention across town before we let you go, John. It's very interesting because, you have a player in Miguel Andujar who, went from American League Rookie of the Year favorite in 2018 to a taxi squad regular in 2020. It looks like Gio Urshela has overtaken Andujar as the Yankees' third baseman. Where does Andujar end up? I mean, and again, do the Yankees hold on to guys too long? Like their decision-making process, and listen, we can't fault the Yankees because they win more than anybody else, but lately it seems like they hold on to guys too long, devalue them because they're not playing them anymore, and then they don't get value. And you might even say that about Gary Sanchez. He's another guy who's really slipped. So where do you see Andujar playing this year?
Somewhere else. And I think Andujar is he's in a tough spot because he can hit. And if he was on a team that needed more offensive production, I think it would be easier to justify getting him into the lineup. The problem is that Gio Urshela hits enough to justify keeping his glove in the lineup because he has a much better glove than Andujar. The Yankees need somebody, defensive-minded players. So where do you put Andujar in the field? There's really nowhere for him to go. He's not going to get regular playing time as a designated hitter because you got Giancarlo Stanton there. So it's going to be tough for him to find playing time, and it's going to be tough for the Yankees to move him. Like you said, they held on to him a long time. He did get hurt, so I don't give the Yankees so much grief for that. But now he's in a tough spot. His value's down. I don't know if there's any way for his value to come up. And there's not a lot of teams in the American League that can use a pure DH type. You look at teams like Texas, Detroit, Baltimore, who maybe could use another bat in their lineup at designated hitter. Maybe they could take a chance at him at third base. Maybe there's a National League team that needs a third baseman. And they're willing to stick him there for his bat. So, but the options are few and far between, and I don't know if he's going to end up in a situation as good as the Yankees in terms of the standings. So I think ultimately he goes somewhere else. I think he goes to a team at the bottom of the standings and in hopes that he can produce for them.
Well, John, how much does the ball game change, excuse the expression, if the National League gets the DH? That still is out there. There's still some discussion over that. Is that something that then expands the number of teams who want him? Because clearly his problem is he can't field.
Yeah, and certainly.
It's also Gary Sanchez's problem, a little bit of a different position. It's more important. We'll have to see what happens with Sanchez this year. If he doesn't hit enough to justify the fact that he really doesn't field that well, the Yankees are in real trouble at the catching position. But, if there's a universal DH, then maybe it's easy for the Yankees to deal Andujar.
Yeah, and I think that, first off, I'm a National League guy. I'm a National League fan. I love that style of baseball, but I do think that baseball needs a universal designated hitter at this point. I think every team deserves the chance to build their team in the same way as each other. So that said, of course, that if the National League takes on the designated hitter, that opens up a lot of jobs, a lot of spots for a guy like Andujar, a guy like Gary Sanchez, who can go somewhere and be a designated hitter, because that seems to be the road he's getting on as well. And it's a tough spot for him too, to have to work out these issues in terms of getting his average up, getting his power back up, and being a good defensive catcher for the New York Yankees. That's an extra layer of pressure for a guy. And again, I don't know if they held on to him 1 year too long. We're going to find out though, aren't we? Yeah, I think we're going to find out about a lot of guys this year. We're certainly going to find out a lot about Gary Sanchez, because Andujar's not going to get a great opportunity here, but Sanchez will get every opportunity to sink or swim. And so we're definitely going to find out about him this year.
All right, Johnny, listen, we would have loved to have Nick Swisher. We will have Nick Swisher in a week or two from now. But, we had the opportunity to do an expanded baseball spot, which is great because, baseball got underway today and, spring training's underway. So great spot with you. Great talking to you, Johnny. We'll speak to you next week.
Always. Thank you very much, guys.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to talk football, and AJ will stay with us as well. So keep it tuned right here to Sports Talk New York.
Do you own a business? When is the last time you actually had a visit from or even spoke with your insurance representative? Did your current insurance agency sell to another firm or maybe merge, leaving you without the attention you deserve? Prince Associates is a provider of commercial insurance nationwide and represents some of the finest insurance carriers in the industry. Prince Associates has been representing commercial clients since 1965, and we continue to grow and offer our personal services in a competitive and ever-changing market. If you want back the insurance relationship you deserve, reach out to us, 516-822-6550. That's area code 516-822-6550. And ask for Leith or Craig, or find us on the web at www.princeins.com.
Decolator Cohen & DeFrisco, LLP, is pleased to introduce their website, policeofficersrighttosue.com, as an educational and informative site designed to instruct members of the law enforcement community of their civil rights in line-of-duty accidents. Many law enforcement members are not aware of their rights to sue and fail to bring lawsuits within a specific time frame, thereby forfeiting their ability to seek rightful compensation against those parties that cause officers to be injured. PoliceofficersRightToSue.com provides successful past results of line-of-duty lawsuits. These examples range from officers being provided with inadequate equipment, RMP accidents, slip and falls, and station house mishaps. If any law enforcement member has a question regarding a potential lawsuit, they can contact DCD at policeofficersrighttosue.com or at 1-800-901-1LAW. That's policeofficersrighttosue.com or 1-800-901-1LAW.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, AJ Carter with you this Sunday evening. If you are just tuning in and you want to hear Nick Swisher, unfortunately, he had a family emergency tonight, not able to do it. We will have him on in a couple of weeks from now. It's time now for the Capco NFL Report with Jay Retcher. Even though it's winter, spring will be here, and we know it will be here because we have spring training underway before you know it. Now's the time to get your windows and doors ready to let the fresh air in and the bugs out with a ClearView retractable screen. The ClearView retractable screen system comes standard with a lifetime warranty and the patented speed reducer so it will not snap back. You get the luxury of a screen door in a sleek, low-profile design without the hassle of a bulky storm door or sliding screen door. Call 631-440-1100 for a free estimate. That's 631-440-1100, or visit them on the web at clearviewlongisland.com. How you doing, Jay?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
Good. I'm sure you're still reveling in your Tampa Bay championship, but as we get closer to the next season, you're going to have to start, filing that away a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the New York Jets and free agency. It's interesting because we all say build around the draft, and you take a look at this team, and we don't know what the future of this team is. Is it Sam Darnold? Is he the quarterback? Or are you going to go out and get Deshaun Watson? Are you going to make that big trade? But let's say you're free agents, okay? You can instantly probably, put in 2 or 3 guys that instantly might change the whole offensive scheme of this team. So let's try and take a look at some targets. Let's start with running back. There are 2 guys out there, Aaron Jones and Todd Gurley. Do you think either one of those would be a nice fit for the Jets, and how much would they improve the Jets? And do we think that the position of running back might be making a little bit of a comeback?
I'm going to go the other way with this, man. I actually think the running back position is probably one of the more overrated positions in the National Football League. I mean, who's the number 1 running back? Derrick Henry, right? But after that, there's a big drop-off. And you look at the injuries in the last couple of years, too, guys like Christian McCaffrey, guys like Saquon Barkley. Man, I mean, the Giants did a decent job running the football with guys like Wayne Gallman and Devontae Freeman. You have to build up front. So I know a lot of guys, want to go out there and make a splash at the running back position. Listen, if Todd Gurley was that good, Atlanta wouldn't have got rid of him. He's having trouble staying healthy too. Aaron Jones, yeah, he's a good player, but how many 8 or 9 man boxes are you really going to see in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback? One thing that I would avoid at all costs is to spend any kind of big money on running backs. I would rock with LaMichael Pirine, draft another running back, maybe sign a veteran guy on the cheap, but don't spend big money at the running back position, especially when you're a team like the Jets that need more than just one hole. It's more the offensive line that you have to improve than the running back position.
Well, that gets to a big Jets question. They have a lot of draft picks stacked up. A lot of they can use or they can deal. So the question is, in your opinion, what are they better off doing in terms of building a team with all those holes to fill? If, for example, they try for Deshaun Watson, that's going to cost them almost that entire, well of built-up draft picks that they have. What will that do to them after that? If you were the Jets, will you just stay the course, build for the draft, or who is the one person out there, or the type of person out there you would say it's worth spending some of those accumulated picks on to trade for?
They're in such a good spot, too, because you're in that second spot in the draft. And obviously, if you're going to get Watson, you're going to have to give that up. But you're going to want to try to trade Sam Darnold. But what we saw in Arizona with, all right, they had the number 1 pick with Kyler Murray, but they had Josh Rosen, who a lot of people were still kind of teasing on, like, all right, let's see, a pretty good player coming out of college, first-round pick for the Cardinals. And once they kind of showed everybody their hand, they lost all of their leverage with Josh Rosen. And, he goes to the Dolphins, and he's on the practice squad with the Bucs this year. Not many people knew that. He was with the Bucs for the majority of the season. I would stay with Darnold now, guys. The more and more I think about it over the weeks, and build from the inside out. You got a really good piece on the defensive side with Quinnen Williams. I know you got a couple of safeties there. I know May's a free agent. You got Ashton Davis as well. I'm building on the offensive and defensive lines and then going outward. You have Mekhi Becton that you got last year as well. That's a good start. You look at the impact that Tristan Wirfs made for the Buccaneers this year. Yeah, I know they had a bunch of skilled players too. Tristan Wirfs gave up one sack the entire year, and he made such a big difference on that offensive line, and it's a huge reason why the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. So to the Jets, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to build from the inside out. Don't reach for players. Don't overspend on guys. This isn't going to be a quick fix. You want to make sure you're doing it the right way. Build through the draft, and then 2 or 3 years from now, you start seeing the fruits of your labor.
All right, Jay, we appreciate it. Jay Retcher here each and every week with the Capco NFL Report. Take a quick break. We'll hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll talk hockey. So keep it tuned right here. Increase your visibility to make sure your promotional materials get packaged in the most attractive way and distributed most efficiently, then you need to call in PIMS. Whether you're launching a new product and need to assemble customized influencer packages or looking for a more efficient way to manage your inventory and collateral, PIMS involvement helps maximize the impact of your brand's performance. For more than 30 years, PIMS has been helping companies get their message out to the right people, offering personalized distribution services and full-scale inventory management solutions. PIMS works its magic on 3 continents, backed by 350,000 square feet of warehouse space. If you're looking for experience, PIMS is it. They've shipped more than 13 million packages and elevated more than 8,000 brands. Want to know more? Check them out on the web, PIMSinc.com. That's PIMSINC.com, and read testimonials from their satisfied clients. That's PIMS, the first name in marketing support.
The Phoenix Tube Company Incorporated is among the country's leading manufacturers of structural ornamental stainless steel tubing, rectangles, squares, and processed flat bars. The company takes pride in its everyday commitment to quality and customer service. The philosophy of the company has been and continues to be to support the growth of the stainless tube market through distribution and service centers throughout the country. Ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing is used for a wide variety of aesthetic and mechanical products where superior finish and corrosion resistance are required. Some products manufactured include tubing for mirror bracket arms, boat rails and ladders, washroom grab bars, swimming pool rail products, medical equipment, automotive step bars and trimming, as well as structural framing for food processing equipment. For a quote or for more information on how the Phoenix Tube Company can meet your ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing needs, Visit them on the web at phoenixtube.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-526-2124.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York. It's time now for the NHL Report with Russ Cohn, sponsored by our friends over at Soho Table Hockey. What's table hockey, you say? Some of us might have grown up with rod hockey or bubble hockey or even air hockey tables. Soho Table Hockey is embracing the nostalgia of those old tabletop games, designed a whole new board for the future. Handcrafted with designer wood, state-of-the-art playing surface, unbendable rods, energy-absorbing walls. This is a table hockey game that players age 8 to 80 can enjoy. Even better, the exceptional quality and design allows the game to stand up to the intensity of tournaments, which is why Soho Table Hockey is the #1 choice of championship players throughout North America. Visit SohoTableHockey.com to learn more and start your order. A custom game, you can choose your wood, center ice logo, and even the team matchups. Go ahead, drop the puck. You'll love Soho Table Hockey so much you won't be able to stop playing. So, Russ, I had sent you a rundown what we're going to talk about. Let's throw that out the window a little bit. We got like 4 or 5 minutes, and let's talk about the Rangers. Mike and I were talking before, and listen, you and I believe, disagree a little bit on Coach Quinn. I think Coach Quinn is the right guy for now. That being said, it's interesting because I was thinking about this on the way in. I kind of view him as Tom Rennie. He's setting the foundation for a lot of these young players. Mm-hmm. Then, you're going to have a different coach. And then by the time these guys come of age and they're ready to contend, it's going to be that third coach. One of the things, though, that I'm a little bit on the fence, and maybe you can help me out here, is, I think he protects his players a little too much. I think there comes a time now. Yes, Lafreniere is an 18-year-old. Yes, Kakko is a 19-year-old. But these are NHL players. So I understand. We all understand what it takes. I don't believe he needs to protect them anymore. I think, if you've made a roster spot, you are supposed to play, and you're supposed to live up to expectations. Additionally, one of the things I'm starting to notice is there are different accountability rules for everyone. How does Brett Howden still get a jersey every single night? And if Julien Gauthier does one thing wrong, he ends up sitting up in the press box. So those are a couple of the thoughts. Help me out there.
Okay. So the first one is, you still, with 18 and 19-year-olds, at times do have to have some sheltered minutes. Just because they've made the team doesn't mean that, they're all there. I do think Quinn's done a better job with Lafreniere lately. And I think it has been since the Flyers game, actually. And so I do see some improvement, and we're seeing some points, and we're seeing a little bit more, I want to say he's a little more confident when he's crossing over center ice, getting into the offensive zone, especially if he has the puck. And I think we see that growing. Brett Howden, I don't know if he's any longer an NHL player. I'll just be honest. I think the Rangers are holding on to him and Lieber Hayek like grim death, because otherwise that trade for Ryan McDonald looks awful. Now, Nils Lundqvist could be the savior in that deal because he is going to be very good. But again, for the landslide that maybe the Rangers kind of sold everybody on, it was not. It was not a great trade. Steve Yzerman got the best of the trade, even if Lundqvist is a very good player. So I think you're right. I think there is, guys, again, I do think Quinn has done a better job lately, but there are guys like Julien Gauthier who can't make a mistake. And I've seen him play some really good minutes, like the same Julien Gauthier that I saw play in juniors and saw play a little bit in Carolina, and I don't think he's getting the shot. And I think you're right about that. And I can't put a finger on it other than to say Quinn just likes his bottom six guys at times. The Rooneys of the world, the Blackwells of the world. These are guys that seem to float his boat because they get his message. But again, if you don't have a team full of those guys, which again, John Tortorella sort of does right now, and you can see what they're doing, then you have to change course a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And look, the Bruins just beat the snot out of the Rangers today. It's plain and simple.
Yeah. And listen, that's one of the things that you kind of look at, and maybe it's one of those teaching moments. See, the Rangers, fed them their lunch the game before, but the Bruins, the Bruins adapted and they changed. And the one thing that was a little concerning to me was, at the post game of the 6-2 win, he said, listen, that was a very good team. They're going to be ready for us next game. And they all knew what to expect. just like what they knew what to expect when the Devils were coming off the COVID, games being out. They knew they were going to have to weather a storm, and they knew it against the Flyers. And so far, 3 times they've come up real small, knowing what they were going to be facing. That's a little bit concerning.
That's concerning, and the Brendan Lemieux, let's drop the gloves and fight at the end of the game, when I believe that's an automatic 1-game suspension. Like, didn't he get suspended at a bad time last year?
Yep.
So what does he do now? He gets suspended at a bad time this year when their forward depth isn't great. And they're hurting for forward depth, and you're actually getting playing time, and now this is how you handle it. Nick Ritchie doesn't care, right? Because he's on the Bruins. They love when he fights, and they've got tons of forward depth.
Right.
So it's not going to hurt the Bruins. It's going to hurt the Rangers. And again, that's something I don't get, and I don't know if Quinn talked about that post-game or not.
No, he did not. All right, Russ, we'll speak to you next week. Russ Cohn here each and every week. AJ, we don't have your theme song, so what do you got for Sunday Papers?
Well, I didn't realize that college football season is actually starting up now. These are the Division I AA teams. And there was a game that was played yesterday. Eastern Washington was playing Idaho. And the game was decided on a missed call by an official who did not see a field goal being made because he was too busy adjusting his mask. So this is a game that Eastern Washington lost basically because of COVID, because the official spent more time adjusting his mask, didn't see, they're playing indoors. And the goalposts are very close to the scoreboard. And the football actually hit the scoreboard, not the goalpost. He missed it. He wasn't looking up. Only in pandemic time, only in COVID time, can a team lose a game because of a bad call by an official who was too busy adjusting his mask.
Okay, we got about a minute, and we have Brett Topel in the studio with us as well. One of the things I did want to speak about, because it is the 70th anniversary of baseball cards, and I don't think there is any collectible that is as perfect as a baseball card. It just, for generations and generations, the design changes a little bit, the artwork, but it's just so pure. The stats, the picture, the team. And you open it up, and no matter what your age is, it's just an amazing thing. So Brett, let's talk for a minute or two here before you go. What's your earliest recollections of baseball cards?
Yeah, Mark, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I get to be on the flagship show for a couple of minutes before I do BT Talks Baseball. And you mentioned the design of Topps baseball cards, and growing up in the 70s, that was the key every year to see how it was going to change. And, the first year I really remember was 1977 and then 78. And I remember the script of the 78, and I could still visualize the cards, the Lenny Randall card of him sliding in and calling timeout. Baseball cards were everything back then. I don't think they hold the same weight today, but man, back in the 70s and 80s.
I started. Before you guys are young, I remember going out and taking my nickel and walking down to the stationery store, the candy store, and taking my nickel and getting the cards, throwing the stale gum away, and looking at that. That was part of the experience.
And AJ putting on his little red wagon on the, make the noise on the spokes. But right. This year, because it's the 70th anniversary, and they have inserts of all the different years in there and making the designs. I am, I'm on a mission. I'm trying to collect this series by the old school way, not buying the full set. I'm going in. It's very expensive, but it's great.
What are you going to do with the gum?
They don't have gum anymore, and now they have these inserts. All right, so Brett, before we go, what's on tap for your show tonight?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited. I have Susan Waldman with me. I have author Ralph Carhart talking about a great book he wrote called The Hall Ball, and of course, Glenn Hausman will be talking about Baltimore and all the places you got to hit there.
Yeah, I love the travel thing, and when I'm looking for, when I retire, I'm already trying to figure out. I think I'm going to have to listen to when he does the West Coast. So far, I've heard all it, but the West Coast is where I really have to pay attention. All right, so keep it tuned right here. We got BT Talks Baseball up next and Carpin's Corner. And then we have Mets Clubhouse Confidential with Rich Cortino. Great stuff on tap. Keep it tuned right here to 365sportscast.com or streaming over your iPhone, your Android, or the Alexa app. We will see everyone next week. Have a great one, everybody.